So we good, Ms. Hollis?
It's converting. I think we're live now if somebody wants to check.
It popped up and told me we were live. But if you need, I can go look and see if it shows up live.
Looks like we're live.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the previous minutes from the last meeting? If not, if there's a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Thank you. Second, anyone?
I can second it.
All right. Thank you, Nadia. Approval of the minutes passes. So we've been through the budget process. I know Dr. Bachman wanted to share how she sees us moving forward on this, or anything else that we need to discuss about the budget as we try to get moving forward. Do you want to tell us, Dr. Bachman?
Sure. So one thing I'll start with, sometimes y'all might wonder, why don't I ever second? Why don't I ever vote? The principal doesn't vote on the Go team. So I'm not just being, I'm not
High and mighty.
abstaining. I'm not abstaining, but principal doesn't vote. So just a reminder about that. So we are with our budget, we're going to pick up where we left off last time, which is Ms. Hollis will show us basically on it's page 7. She's going to show us our next steps, which is the priorities and SMART goals. And then I'll show you how we've kind of divvied up the budget money for this year according to the priorities and SMART goals.
Is there a document I should have in front of me right now?
No, I mean like a hard copy or no.
Just whatever, anything to look at, like the draft budget from the last meeting, or yeah, if not, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, we'll go through that. We can quickly review that. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure she's going to bring it up.
I'm so used to operating with 2 screens, so it's very difficult. Give me 1 second, share screen. And I don't want to share the YouTube page. So
Okay. All right. So this is where we left off from last time. And so we'll go through some pages. What we're trying to do is get to the end because we have our staffing conference this week on Thursday. So the budget had to be tentatively done so that we can have our staffing conference. So that's where we are. So our priorities and SMART goals. So offer a rigorous and culturally, remember we said these are our 2 priorities, major priorities from our for us to focus on. So offer a rigorous and culturally sustaining curriculum that prepares students for college, career, and civic engagement. And the SMART goal about that is the percentage of students who graduate in 4 years will increase from 89.8 to 93% in June 2025. So, and then now we need some type of SMART goal for this second one. Directly solicit and act on teacher input regarding course selection, professional development, instructional resources, communication, and collegiality. If you remember last time we talked a little bit about this and talked about, so how do we do that? How do we measure that in a consistent way? We mentioned that the Gallup poll, the Gallup survey that all staff members do twice a year. So I guess we need to come up with something here to go in here before we can move on. Some kind of SMART goal.
This goal will be added to the strategic plan as well.
But you said there was nothing, there wasn't anything quantitative or measurable in the Gallup poll necessarily that we could tie into. Is that correct, Dr. Locke?
I mean, there is, yeah, you can increase. I mean, there's 12 category or 12 questions, and you certainly, your hope is that you get better.
Right.
You know, that those questions, that the answers get better. You know, we can take this year as a baseline. You know, and those questions, I mean, our priorities there, you do hit on, and Susan, you and Chris and Artis are probably more well-versed in this because you've been studying this, but instructional resources definitely is a part of Gallup, the communication, collegiality, you know, is all embedded in Gallup pretty much. Would you have said that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the 12 questions is at work, my opinions seem to count. I mean, I would be definitely satisfied with that being a metric. Although the issue is, or the challenge is that we've talked about in some of our meetings, Dr. Bachman, right, is that the district and the school can sometimes kind of get conflated in the data. And so if we set a SMART goal here, that it might be hard to break apart what people are feeling about my opinions don't count in the district versus my opinions don't count in the school, because it's by design not saying like at my school. It's just, and so different people interpret it different ways. I still think it would trend with the way people are feeling in general. So I don't think we'd even have to set like a particularly ambitious level of growth or like a number to hit, but like naming that was the factor that we're working toward, I think would be really, really positive.
Well, then let me ask Dr. Bachman to Keisha, what could we say would be a goal? Because I don't know how the poll, how it measures or what data comes out of it, if it's a satisfaction rate or what.
No, you get a Likert scale, 1 to 5, and each question you get the average score on each question based on who, you know, answered the questions for your school. Coupled with the fact that if you do, whether or not your opinions count, I would just caution that just because it depends on how you define your opinions counting. Your opinions can be heard and very much so considered, but that might not be in alignment, right? And so just to consider some of those things when you're deciding.
This is Joel. Good evening, everyone. I think when I read this this priority, I think about if you want a measure, one is how many times do the instructors, the teachers, and administration meet in order to gather all this content, all this data. And so let's say, for instance, you have a goal of meeting quarterly or bi-monthly in order to solicit, because the solicit and act, those are the two actions that you have to take, and that's what you have to measure. So how many times do you believe is appropriate to solicit all this information? And then how do you intend on acting on this information? And what would that look like in the end of the year? Would it be the establishment of something? Would it be having acted upon a certain amount of recommendations made from these conversations? To me, that would be the goal that you want to try to aspire for.
Well, that would require then, I think, us saying that the SMART goal would have to be an internal process that Dr. Bachman saw as, and maybe it's in alignment with a quarterly or an annual, teacher input of some sort. Unless I'm mistaken. And I know you have leadership meetings, I know you have staff meetings, but I don't know if there's a way to gauge that.
Yeah, I do think we'd have to, work out a mechanism for this. And there can be some benchmarks, like, we can say monthly meetings, with administration, open meetings. I used to do that in my first couple of years here, I'd have a morning meeting open to anybody from like 8 to 8:30. And then I'd do one in the afternoon. We just sit in a circle. I'd bring some donuts, and it really was just open to talk. I didn't have an agenda, and it was just whoever showed up. We can do something like that, say monthly, listening sessions by administration. That's not really a SMART goal. I don't know. This was,
Well, no, I would
knew
say
when we
that's part of
said
it,
this,
Dr. Bachman.
when we developed this, it was going to be difficult.
Well, I think part of the measurement is establishing a cadence of communication, right? Then the second part is acting upon what you've heard. And because I think, and I'm not a teacher, and I would not speak for them, but I think what they're looking for is to be heard, and whatever that is said is acted upon in a manner that where you could be held accountable as an administration, that you did what you said you were going to do in the time period that you were going to do it in, right? So I know what I'm offering isn't stylized in a way to create a goal, but I think it helps narrow the universe some, where I think it's a two-part process. One is the goal could be meeting X amount of time with teachers to discuss issues of importance that should be brought forth to the administration, and administration developing a process by which they respond in a meaningful time and an authentic way to those issues that are brought forth, and using all the resources that are listed in this priority. A simplified version of what I just said would, I think, represent this based on how I read it. But then again, others may read it differently.
I will say that a lot of times when we're soliciting, it is not in a meeting format because the turnaround is so tight and teachers are already stretched as far as trying to find time to meet additionally, especially like right now, post-pandemic. So I guess when we're trying to provide data, and maybe this is something we don't have to discuss right now, how does that look if you're soliciting information and meeting those demands, but is outside of this quarterly meeting? Like, does that data count as well?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm in a position to answer that, but I appreciate the question and concern. And also, it's not going to be as clean as I'm articulating it, right? There's variables that come into play. But if this is a priority for the school, and meaning that this is something of importance to those who are part of this school, then we have to figure out a way that's amenable to all parties, recognizing those variables that make it challenging to the full execution the way that we aspire to. We're never gonna achieve optimal implementation, but I think we have to show good faith in trying to do so, because we are claiming this is a priority and of importance to all who are part of this institution.
Chris, can you perhaps show the results from the December as an example of how it might move the needle maybe a little bit?
He may have had to go to his meeting. I don't know.
Yeah, he's at a dentist appointment. Do we just need the Gallup pulled up? Because I have that pulled up in the background. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. If Miss Hollis wants to give me screen sharing.
Everybody has screen sharing.
Good to know. All right, hang on. All right. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
All right. So which page do we want to go to?
So the, let's see. Probably the one that lists the whole breakdown that has all the 12. So let's see, the one we're talking about specifically is it 7, Susan? And is it the one y'all were working on, 7?
We were working on 6.
6. Someone at work who encourages my development.
Yep, that's the one that we targeted.
Okay. So
And
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I need to look at the strategic priority again. Yeah, so I think solicit and act are key words in here. I even think like part of this work that we've been doing with meeting after the Gallup poll and talking about like how we, okay, let me pull that up. Talking about, you know, how do we, I mean, we are like, we're gathering information, we're surveying teachers, we open that up, we're looking at that next in department meetings and talking about it. So like, I think we're already doing some of that. If there's just a way that we can word that, maybe we do want to choose like one, something off the Gallup poll each year to focus on and follow up on and do follow-up work. Like maybe that's our goal that does, you know, through the things that we're asking on this survey that we just sent out and that we're going to be talking about in department meetings, it's addressing all of these things that are in the strategic priority. So I'm not sure that we have to put like, you know, the Gallup poll survey is going to go up a certain percentage, but that we're providing opportunities, you know, X number opportunities during the year for feedback.
So formalize the, right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So just formalize. And by that, I mean like writing down ways we will specifically gather input.
Yep.
Like
and I think the quantitative nature
right.
can be like the number of times we'll set to do that during the year.
Right. A formal like feedback loop or something like that. That
because the Gallup polls once a year, correct?
This year, Travis said we're going to do it twice. I think, didn't he say that we're going to do
every
it
year? Every year is in the fall and the spring.
Okay. Okay. So we will.
Yeah,
we will do it again.
Yeah, I was thinking he said we only did it once last year, but maybe not. The other thing that we talked about.
I think it was one last year just because of the
yeah.
And trying to get back in the building.
Yeah, so we're going back to twice a year. You know, the other thing that we had discussed, I think, I can't remember if it's in a Go Team meeting or when we did our follow-up meeting from the Gallup poll, was to develop some type of internal survey. So there's not this, like Chris was talking about, are we talking about the district here? Are we talking about our school? But then we could really be zeroed in and specific. So I don't know if that's something that could come into play here as well.
Yeah, we did talk about that, about
trying to find. You also have the state's school climate survey that's given to teachers about school-based questions specifically. That survey is longer, but you do get the data released annually concerning like you can identify a question you want to address as well. So I don't know if we want to reinvent the wheel and keep adding survey on survey, or look at the surveys that are available first.
Yep. No, I think if we have something in place already, that makes sense, that that's what we use. And that survey is specific to our school.
Yes.
Yes,
what
the
the
DOE
students-
survey is specific to the school.
That's still just an annual, right?
The students do it, the
The
parents and
climate.
the teachers, faculty.
Yes, it is annual.
Okay. So I think, personally, I think some hybrid between what Dr. Bachman said, using the climate survey, using the Gallup information, but maybe we set a target to say 3/4 times a year to have maybe that open meeting that you mentioned, Dr. Bachman. So staff can then say, well, this is what we saw on that information, or these are some things coming up. That gives you an opportunity to solicit and to act on these things. Could we do that because that is a goal? That's the goal, is to have 3 or 4 of these open things, but I hate to add more meetings to anybody's schedule. So I don't know how, or if it could be.
They would be voluntary,
Yeah.
And I think this is what I'm talking off the top of my head, but this is what I would propose. Maybe we have 2 open meetings, one in the fall, one in the spring with admin, and then 2 within departments where we kind of flesh things out in smaller groups. That seems more manageable. We have department meetings built in to begin with, where we can address, and we do address some of these things in department meetings already.
And to your point, Susan, like the data for the climate survey is released in the summer. So you'll have that going into the beginning of the school year from the, it's lag data, but still data.
Yep.
Then you have the Q12 that ends in October and you get the data in November. And then, they take the survey again for the state, December, January, February-ish, and then you take the spring Q12. So there are natural surveys that's happening that you're getting data periodically to see whatever thing you're trying to address, what you need to focus on. So it could be, like you said, a hybrid.
So would it make sense, Dr. Bachman, do you think that, I don't know when your leadership, like Susan, you said your content area meetings are, or whatever, that those meetings be held before the open one that Dr. Bachman would offer twice a year. So that way things could be hashed out amongst staff if somebody couldn't attend, but maybe that information could be carried forward to an open meeting. So should we put a month on this and say that they will be held in September and March, or October? I mean, at least then they're defined, they're kind of down there. The goals are to have these 2 meetings that are supported by the 2 internal, content area meetings, however you do that. But maybe that way it could just be, written out.
If we're going to commit to getting people more input and all that, I feel like it needs to be more often. I mean, I know that's a commitment on my part, but, I really feel like if we're going to move the needle on teachers feeling more involved, faculty more involved, giving more input, it's got to be every month. I've got to be open to hearing from people every month.
It's almost like a principal's coffee for teachers.
It is. It's exactly what it is.
Right.
I was just thinking that. Yeah. I mean, we have to. I don't, you know, if we're gonna, I don't want to go through the motions. If this is an important thing for the staff, then we've got to really go full bore into it, you know? So can we, Artis, can you take that down? And let's just go back to the page 7, the SMART goal. I mean, and maybe Diane, you're on this as well. Jacoby, I see you're on this. I mean, how do we quantify this? Can you have any suggestions of how do we quantify this into a SMART goal by any chance?
First, I have to apologize. I was a few minutes late, and this is about engaging the staff, right?
Yeah, and the goal, the priority is directly, well, you can we go back to that? Yeah,
directly solicit and act on teacher input regarding course selection, professional development, instructional resources. So when you say course selection, you mean the courses available to the students?
I guess that's
or
what
professional development.
I think both.
Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about before, the course selection is really driven by the kids. If we were gonna, and this, you know, what we can offer by the state, the course of codes and that kind of thing. You know.
And again, I don't think this is setting us up to say teachers get to choose what they think. Like, we have to be very clear when we're communicating with teachers, like, that is not what this means.
Right.
So I was
also, if teachers have a sweet spot, we should have a place to make that known. It just doesn't automatically mean alignment in that, because
well, so
like said,
examples of that would be
determine the schedule, they drive the schedule.
You know, we developed the multicultural lit class. That's, to me, that's act on teacher input completely. A few years ago, Mr. Sellers wanted to develop this scientific research science course that we offered for 3 years. You know, so those are, you know, those are ways that we do that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess when I look at that and I hear they want, teachers want more input on what they teach, it's literally when I hear that, I am thinking like, okay, I don't want to teach Brit Lit. I only want to teach whatever the other. Just giving an example. And so, of course, we all know that that's not. You can't 100%. Everybody, it's not. You can't meet everybody's 100%. Just their kind of wants per se. But I guess what people are looking for is just more so just, I guess, either rotating more or things like that. And then the biggest issue that I see with this entire, and I think that's what we're talking about right now, is just making this is so hard to quantify, put into something that's easily quantifiable. It's really important, and I think that's why it is a priority, but it's very hard to quantify.
So I would go with the SMART goal off the top of my head. And again, please don't get too bogged down in this, because the other thing is Travis can help you. But what I'm hearing you say when you're talking about this, I personally would go more towards a SMART goal of one, setting up the SMART goal is to have, and I'm thinking off the top of my head. So again, we can wordsmith it with Travis, kind of like regular channels and cadence for input. And then the goal would be to measure the percentage of faculty who engage in these channels in one way or another. I mean, and engagement can be, I'm happy with everything. It can just be like, I don't want to answer anything else. I'm happy and I'm going to move on. I would be really careful with that course selection, because you don't want teachers necessarily completely driving what students can or cannot take, right? So if you have a whole cohort of kids that comes in and says that as their senior English option, they would love to see a class on a science fiction literature class, and I'm not saying that it would happen, but you would definitely want to be able to have that discussion among your faculty of, do we have the resources? If we have if we have 25 kids who are saying for senior English, they want to do science fiction, are kids driving the courses or our teachers, or is it that combination of skill sets matching desire? And I think you want to make sure that your community understands that it's that intersection of student desire matching staff skill sets versus staff
Yes.
saying so.
Very much so, right. It drives like just every year, like the number of kids that want to take, just say AP Latin or Latin 4.
Right.
I mean, it just, yeah, there is not going to be course selection because the teachers can't say, I want to teach this.
Right, but in terms of the SMART goal for this priority, I would have it as setting up the regular channels and cadence, and then also do a measure of the percentage of teachers who participate on things, and hope to see a increase of teachers participating in the feedback channels.
Mhm.
That
I
would be
think
my
that's a good-
suggestion.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to approach it.
Yeah.
So a certain number of times a year.
So Dr.
Right.
Bachman's already said monthly. She'd like.
Yeah, that's fine for me
Okay. So a monthly open administrative meeting to discuss, these elements. Now,
to garner input and suggestions, right, on
Right.
these things,
okay.
And I would say too, kind of thinking about, and this is the good thing about Midtown, our kids, they do drive a lot of our decision making, which is really good. And then we just have to remember that as the experts in the room, that while that's important, we also want to give them the options. So say, for instance, kids may not ever know that there's an actual course for taking hip hop and music. Like that's an actual course that's offered through the state of Georgia on the actual course list. And so if we never present these options to them, then they would never know that class existed. I think for this year, kids were like, AP music theory, like that's a thing, and we were like, yeah, that's a thing. And so they wanted to take it. So just kind of, I would say at those meetings in the SMART goal, kind of to be specific about like, hey, we're going to give kids a layout of the actual options, not just the stuff that we've already offered, so that they actually know that there's more stuff out there that we can teach under our umbrella and under our certifications.
But we also have to be careful with just opening up anything, because you do have resource limitations, not just teacher, but classrooms and just resource limitations. Like we can't just say whatever you want, you can have, because then the course selection will look like 5 people want this, 5 people want that, 5 people want this, and you never get a consensus of what does the majority want, so you can let that class make. So it can't just be whatever the state offers, and some things that the state offers, the district doesn't permit. So I think that while the conversation is good, we have to also keep in mind it's not pie in the sky. If we're going to have critical conversations, let's also put some guardrails around that conversation so people can understand their expectation level and we won't be missing the bar.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, we don't want to take the kid to the candy store, so to speak, and just let them run wild. It's just, giving them a couple of options, literally, here are some of the options. I mean, kind of what we do now, but I guess that meeting would be, hey, here's some extra stuff that we can pursue, but not literally just looking down a million courses that we have. No, that's not what we want to do.
I want to
And
ask,
the understanding that if you add, something is being taken away.
yeah, I want to add about with the new signature program, if we are all these courses, is something also going to change the course selection and everything, because it's a new program that we are incorporating now.
Yes,
Mhm.
it could. It could
Mhm.
definitely. Yes.
I also wanted to suggest perhaps not always having it be a face-to-face meeting. Like if you just had an opportunity, a monthly opportunity to provide feedback. It could also be like just a Google form, like a very like
Right,
5 questions. And I wonder if you might get higher participation if you have different ways of soliciting feedback
Mhm.
too.
Yeah,
Yes.
I totally agree with that. I think that's, and that's why I was thinking about department meetings too, as being maybe some type of way for feedback, because we're already doing that. We're already having monthly department meetings. So if we can use that time to incorporate this, that's a good use of our time.
Okay. So, okay. So
So
develop.
maybe monthly opportunities for soliciting teacher input. I don't think we have to be specific on all of these things, because then it gets too specific, right?
Right. Mhm.
Um,
I popped something in the chat. I don't know if anybody's read it at all. So, but you can,
So, oh, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
no, it was me. It was just
Oh.
that we have a monthly open administrative meeting hosted by the principal to solicit teacher feedback and develop action plans for improvement. And you could also tag on, as well as having a Google survey that could be reviewed.
So again, don't get like your strategic plan, maybe don't get too into the wordsmithing of it, but stick with the goal. What I'm hearing from
Okay.
all of you is that you want this to be monthly, and you want to see increased engagement from the staff. Like you want to see genuine engagement from the staff. So on that, like if you can, if those are actually the goals that you want something monthly, and you want to see, a high percentage of staff participating in whatever that channel is, you can kind of put that in, and Travis, who is our expert on building SMART goals, can really help Principal Bachman
I agree.
wordsmith it because if I recall correctly, this is your budget development conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
So, how much time do you want to spend on this versus talking about the budget?
No, I don't. And so can we move on and put this in later? This.
Like I said, if you have that big umbrella that everybody is saying that, yes, we'll agree on this, that these are the 2 main goals, and we'll get into the nitty gritty details, then yes, I would say you can move on.
Okay.
But kind of get that tacit, if the team can agree on those that's where you want the SMART goal to go, and then move on.
Okay. I think we do agree. I feel like there's agreement.
Yep. I agree.
I can just
I agree.
call for a vote on this so that we agree that this is going to happen.
As a placeholder, since I'm putting this in the minutes, can I use that language I just put in the chat? Administrators will provide monthly opportunities for soliciting teacher input on their professional engagement. Goal is to have 80% of teachers engage in 1 or more. I mean, that's like kind of in some ways, a very reasonable bar to at least have 80% teachers come to something or fill out a survey. And then, yeah, you can change it later, I guess. This isn't the last draft.
Okay.
But just so we're voting on something.
Can we put faculty? Can we put faculty and not just teacher?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I know they don't necessarily are clerks course selection, but somehow, yeah, just.
No, but like communication, collegiality, all of that, like, right. And I love that with your 80%, I'm like 50%.
Yeah, because really, Nadia, it's it's yeah, and I don't even know how would we, because it's not really how would we check off you know, that Susan came to something and Chris came to something and artists came to, or our artists gave feedback in a Google. I mean, how do we don't have to worry about that now, but I'm just saying,
Yeah, I agree.
you know,
Let's talk to Travis
okay.
about it. I think that's a good placeholder.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, great.
Can we vote that we all agree on this and just say that we all agree so that it can be worked out down the road with Travis and Dr. Bachman?
Okay.
Is there a
I
motion?
agree. Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed? It passes. All right. Thank you. It's official.
Okay. So our next slide.
I'm sorry, can you send that to TQ Hollis so that I can get that in the presentation?
Just pull it out of the chat and send it to you.
That's fine. I just need somebody to send it to me.
I will. I'm doing that right now.
Okay. All right. So the budget parameters, again, back to the two priorities. You see the two priorities. We have to put a rationale. So for the rationale for the first one, it encompasses, our school priority encompasses the work of the school and the APS 5, which are district priorities. We also wanted to explicitly call out civic and service opportunities for students. So that's why that's one of our priorities. And then the rationale for what we just talked about, teacher involvement in decision-making and instructional needs illustrates how invaluable the wealth of knowledge each teacher and staff brings to the building. However, the school wants to build the capacity of staff by generating opportunities for professional development. So that's kind of the rationale. We kind of put that together. It's a draft. Does anybody have any problems with those?
Nope.
All right, so here we go. This budget, and we've some of this is a review. This budget represents an investment plan for our school students, employees, and community as a whole. The budget recommendations are tied directly to the school's strategic vision and direction. The proposed budget for the general operations of the school are reflected at $13,215,928. This investment plan for FY23 accommodates the student population that's projected to be 1,591 students, which is an increase of 1 student from this current budget. So this is what we went over last time. This total school allocations there. You can see the count is 1591. The weight of each student, the base weight of each student comes in at a little over 7 million. And then we went through all these before. Nothing has changed in that. Our budget hasn't changed. So our school allocation for signature theme is 379,000. This year we will, of course, we are hiring a full-time coordinator out of that money, full-time signature theme coordinator, whatever that turns out to be. That's an expectation of the district.
I was about to ask, every school who does the STEAM has to have or just every school in general?
Every school, whatever their signature program is,
Gotcha.
they have to have a signature program specialist,
Gotcha.
elementary through high.
Okay.
And our summer bridge program, that's for the Rising Ninth. And field trip transportation, 44,000. District funded stipends, 194,000. We reviewed that last time. Total FTE allotments. So that's where we ended up with the total for the allocation of the little over 13 million. So this is how it's divided up by function. This is my suggestion for where the money needs to go that we have. So in instruction, and that is the biggest part of our budget, which is teachers and instructional, that's 10 million. People services, 862,000. You can see the breakdown per pupil. Improvement of instructional services, 109,000. Instructional staff training, 30,000. Educational media services, 158,000. School administration, 1,200,000, and that is we can get more detailed about that, but that is not just a principal and assistant principals making that. You can see there are 13.5 people in that category. Maintenance and operations, 400, and that's 9 people. 467,000 transportation. So. What questions do you have about that, if any? This breaks it down in a pie chart for you.
Can we go back to it in a second?
Dr. Bachman, I have a question, but I'll wait until the appropriate time. I didn't know somebody may be asking now.
Go ahead, Joel.
Okay, thank you. This is just my first glance, but I'm curious about, and this might not be the appropriate time. I'm willing to put it in a bike rack if needed. I'm just thinking about the climate today regarding public schools and the issue of retention and also recruitment. I know we had conversations about it before, but is there any way in the budget, or has it been asked of the board to provide funding so that way you could offer incentives to retain, but also attract the talent that you need moving forward in the next school year?
The only way you can deviate, well, you really can't, you cannot deviate from a salary structure. It's very tight. It's, I couldn't pay a teacher more if I wanted to, a base salary. The only way maybe the way that teachers get extra, I would say, is through stipends for extra duties. Now, the district does pay bonuses for certain, and in certain schools, like if you're a Title I school, really high need Title I school, those teachers get paid more. And if you're this year, if you're science, math, a certain foreign language, very hard to find Spanish, special ed, they got a base rate higher than a teacher at Springdale Park versus a teacher in a different cluster that has a higher need. That's a district thing. So I cannot pay anybody more than the salary structure
Can we,
people get for extra duties, again, people get more, and they get a stipend for the extra duties that they do.
I have a question about a couple of the categories. So $30,000 for transportation. What are we paying for in terms of transportation? Like what does that cost? Is that just for like if we want to send kids on field trips?
Yes, field trips.
So typically, and I'm just curious how everybody else does field trips. So do we ever charge kids money for transportation for field trips, or is it just like we take a kid?
Oh, absolutely, we do. I mean, like we may use some, I'll just say for ThesCon, okay, maybe we can pay some of that because they had to use charter buses or something, some of that can go to that, but we absolutely ask kids to pay.
Okay.
We're no longer Title I school, so we get no extra funds. Title I we could put a bunch of Title I money in that, but we do expect kids to, possible to pay for these kind of things if they can.
Okay. And then the second one I had was instructional staff training. What are we paying for instructional, like just, I'm sure we can't list everything off, but just a couple of things that we have to pay for outside of what the district offers for PLs.
Ms. Hollis, you want to address that?
The answer would be it depends. There has been times when we use outside vendors to come in and do retraining on like refocusing us on our mission and vision for the school specifically, or we've sent people to restorative practice trainings. We've sent people to
Reading, I mean, right, reading. You know, we could also pay for gifted, possibly gifted, you know, something like that. Gifted
we've
training.
sent people to AP training, and all that money comes out of that. We've sent people to classroom management training. I mean, so we've sent people to different conferences. Yep, as Barbara stated too, we've paid for NCTE, the Social Study National Conference, ASCD. Like we've spent a lot of money in the past on professional development. It's just once the district put a hold against travel, then it was more like virtual training. So we've sent people to ITSE over the summer. So it just depends. But specifically how we're addressing professional development will be called out probably inside slide like 20, but we're on slide 9.
Yeah, so with the instruction, like say for instance, we have $30,000 budgeted out. Is this budget like flexible throughout the year? Like say for instance, we don't use $30,000 worth of funds for instructional staff training. Can we reallocate that like in the middle of the? Okay, all right, that's all I really wanted to know. Because I was like, okay, makes sense. Cool.
Okay, next, Alice.
So right now we're in the late February to early March. As Dr. Bachman said, staffing conferences will be this week. And we have to have this budget approved by the GO team by March 18th. And so we wanted to get into, from a school's perspective, how did we prioritize our spending, what strategies specifically we were looking at to address those 2 priorities that we wanted to focus on, and how much that ask would be to support that strategy. And just a reminder, like a good 85% of the budget is just salaries. So from the school's perspective, we wanted to maintain lower class sizes in on-level math and ELA classes, specifically in 9th grade, to continue to address the needs for transition from middle school to high school, maximize our wraparound services with the graduation coach, psychologist, bilingual support specialist, counseling clerk, and career coach. So those things are already in place, but we have to continue to fund these positions in order to continue to serve the students and maintain the services at the level that we're at right now. Looking at how can we increase reading and Lexile levels for all students in order to prepare them for what we're trying to address, which is college, career, and civic engagement. And specifically, what can we do to address that bottom quartile so we can decrease the achievement gap between the higher quartile and the bottom quartile, as indicated by MAP data, and maximize the intervention for math and ELA dedicated time for students to receive these specific interventions. Continuing, wanting to increase the percentage of Black and Hispanic students graduating in 4 years, making sure we're focusing on credit accrual and the needs that are specific to transient students. Oftentimes we get students that did not matriculate all for, well, K-12 within the cluster, which brings a different level of need when a student transfers in junior year. And you're trying to address their needs and make sure that they get on track to graduate. Maintain a more welcoming environment for parents and students to ensure that community is abreast of information and opportunities. And our rationale for that was to ensure that students and families are receiving all the communication necessary and preferably in their language. Ensure great customer service as families enter into Midtown High School. We want to reestablish the professional learning opportunities outside of Metro Atlanta in virtual spaces. We have been doing some things virtually when teachers have asked for it. Certainly, ITSE and some other conferences have been virtual, and some teachers have asked for those, and they were able to attend. But as travel restrictions are decreasing, then we want to be able to give them their opportunities to do that while maintaining a balance in student needs as well. Develop a plan for
certification.
Thank you, because the transcription is right in the middle of that slide. In whatever the chosen signature program is, because the school has to be certified by May of 2026. And so
we're not gonna, I don't want to just, y'all can see we tried to incorporate everything. You can hear some of the discussions, right, that we've had since August, September in these things. I hope you're hearing that. Okay.
Okay. And to go to the specific asks, as far as professional development for staff and, registration into different professional publications and purchasing substitutes for said travel, we're looking at about $75,000. To provide teachers with whatever instructional materials that they're requesting. Currently, we've been spending around $110,000 on web-based subscriptions, software, supplemental materials, essentially whatever they ask for. And trying to do it more strategically as opposed to just purchasing, because it would be much more if we purchase licenses for everyone. Replenishing student equipment, monies for the media center, CTSO memberships, making sure that students have an opportunity to participate in those organizations that are career-based, and the purchase of a media center paraprofessional is going to cost about $135,000. And that, those are things that we're currently doing and trying to continue that.
Okay, so Ms. Hollis, am I correct that if we have two targeted goals that we're trying to get to, you're basically saying we've got to find money from somewhere to move it to get towards, if we want to increase either of our two SMART goals? Am I correct?
Say that again.
So, what do you mean, Boyd?
Well, if we're talking about the budget, is this an explanation, or are we trying as a Go team to say we'd like to see more money put into X, and that means it's going to have to come from Y?
Yes. So this is the money that's left over after all the salaries and all the stuff that this is the leftover money. So this is what what we put down is how we see the budget breaking out. If there's discussion, anything, definitely this is the time to discuss things that if the Go team feels like more money should be put in building a culture of student support, we can do that.
But I think, Boyd, the way it's set up now is the proposed budget. So
Yeah.
if
No,
we,
no, no.
like, we're not,
Yeah, I get that.
we
but
don't
when I-
necessarily have to be moving stuff
No, we
around.
we don't have to change anything.
Right.
So,
I
And
do.
I mean, but there are areas that we did change some things. Like
Because of the
we
goal.
didn't spend
right.
75, we didn't spend $75,000 on travel and professional development this past year. So there are certain things where it's been called out that this money has been allocated towards those things.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do have a question about and about the graduation coach and career coach. So we're saying we already have 2 graduation coaches on staff, correct? And then I'm trying to, do we already have a career coach on staff or no?
we
Yes.
do.
Okay.
part-time, she's half-time.
What do those 2 graduation coaches do that are really different from the role of a counselor?
So
they
with
have-
the budget, go ahead.
They have a specific list of job duties that are very different. Their job is to really work with kids that have attendance problems and credit problems to really get them to graduation. So because of the high need, especially after coming back after the pandemic, a number of kids failed, and we knew that attendance was going to be a problem. So we hired an additional one.
Mm-hmm.
And she works with 9th and 10th, and the other one works with 11th and 12th. But their role is definitely different than a guidance counselor or school counselor.
Yeah.
And I can say that I've, seen hands on the graduation coach with seniors who are in my classes. And I mean, it's like the counselor, they are involved in like the nitty gritty in these students' lives that the counselors just don't have time for. And a lot of times they advocate for the students or help the students advocate for themselves. And I mean, if anything, I would be like, we need more of this.
Yes.
I've
Okay.
also seen it with 9th graders, which is I thought was really refreshing to already be thinking about graduation coaching with interventions with 9th graders, because I just see a lot of kids start falling through the cracks early on in their high school experience.
Right.
Yeah. If you look at the contact logs, when you look at kids, you'll see a tremendous number of contacts from Ms. Hatcher, Ms. Vaughn, Melissa Vaughn, and Kristen Robinson. Tremendous number of parent contacts with kids. Just, it's a lot. Okay, and then the other categories of creating a system of school support. Of course, we have Ms. Rivera here, a bilingual communication specialist, attendance clerk, front office clerk, counseling clerk. Those people all they all create a nurturing kind of environment, student support for the kids. I really feel like that. And then ensuring students have help, and need to review, that doesn't read right. Have the help they need to accrue needed credits while supporting teacher well-being. So purchase contracted services for tutoring during lunch and contracted mentoring programs, which are in place. We're getting those off the ground. The purchasing department has been very, very slow to help us with that, but we are getting that off the ground. Lunchtime tutoring and mentoring. So we want to continue that because we've just gotten it going. So collecting.
Can I ask a quick question here? Sorry to interrupt. I no need to rehash the things that I missed, but right as I had to kind of like sign off, there was a discussion starting around perhaps having some sort of meeting with teachers or staff, just like kind of some sort of open space for discussion. I'm just looking at the priority around directly soliciting and acting on teacher input, and just thinking about the process, like when we think about soliciting and acting, just to like make sure that that process for whatever we're going to spend that money on, that there's some kind of like broad understanding. And I was wondering if we came to any structures of regular time for teachers to basically ask for things or to give suggestions, things like that.
Chris, I just put the motion in the chat so you could.
Oh, great. Awesome. Oh, cool. Then I'll take a look at that. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, that's all right. Okay. So in the fostering excellence, academic excellence for all, collect data and communicate progress to students and parents, purchase Schoology and data management software, 18,000. And then establish a path to certification in the chosen signature program, purchase a signature program specialist, and then purchase needed professional development opportunities. Again, we don't know what that's going to be, you know, IB, STEAM, we don't know, but the majority of that, of course, is the person.
And that's the development for that person specifically.
Right. So, I mean, that'll be 100,000 with benefits and everything, I'd imagine, you know.
That position starts next year?
Yes.
I have one more question about teacher salary. Do we pay for, because a while ago I remember some budget meeting and somebody had asked this question, I can't remember the answer. Say for instance, the difference between a first year teacher with a bachelor's and, you know, somebody who's in year 25 with a doctorate. Do we cover, is that like, okay, this person makes $90,000 a year, so we have to cover all 90, or how does that work?
You get an average rate plus benefits and retirement that's established by the district.
We don't,
not the average rate of tenure in the building, but I don't know what the average rate is based on, how many years, but we don't get to negotiate what that rate is.
Well, there's a base,
how
right,
much
what
you
is it,
cost.
92?
94.
94,000 per teacher is what our budget is.
And does that change per school, or is that just like across the board, like every school in the district has approximately?
It changes for Title I school versus non-Title I schools.
We pay more. Non-Title I pays more.
Because we don't have the funds to offset it, correct?
No, because they said traditionally non-Title I schools have teachers that have more tenure, more years of service. And so you cost more.
And there's data to back that up, I take it.
I assume so. They go over all that on the budget committee. And I'm not sure who volunteered to be a part of that conversation, but each Go team has the opportunity to send a representative to listen to those discussions as they develop.
Interesting. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Create opportunities for teacher planning during summer months, maintain professional learning with stipends during the summer. So we put 40,000 in that. You know, some things we use that on are before pre-planning, usually the day before it starts. I bring together our co-teachers, special ed staff, and our co-teachers as well to do a day of planning for that. Special ed, we, as Ms. House mentioned before, maybe we could pay, well, no, this is the teacher training. I was gonna say the AP. But for instance, we're gonna bring on hopefully a couple of new classes in social studies, which I talked about before, intro to Black studies, intro to Hispanic, intro to women's studies, intro to Asian studies, depending on what kids choose. We're not going to bring on all 4 of those, but we'll go with the majority. And you know, the teachers of those courses, they're new courses, will need some time to, you know, maybe a week in June, maybe 2 weeks to develop the curriculum of those classes. I mean, so we would pay the teachers for that. You know, so that eats up a lot of money. And there's some other stipend, other reasons we use stipends for in the summer as well for planning. And then stipends for teacher leadership, school-based roles. Those are, Ms. House, you want to talk about that, but that's like a teacher, the mentor, Mr. Wallace does the mentor teacher. Other things to do.
Team leaders, because the district only gives so much towards that position, and from a lens of fairness, we add on in order to make sure all of them are covered. The quiz bowl, like things that take up a lot of time, debate, things of that nature. And then the last one is instructional materials and supplies. We don't ask anyone to get a box of paper, pens, pencils, markers, whatever teachers need. Try to have that money allocated. There are some schools that do require you to get your own materials. So we try to make sure that is taken care of. That is the breakdown for, am I wrong? Yeah, that ends the breakdown of the actual budget. And then we're supposed to break down if we are given the reserves that's held back, how would we utilize those funds? And these are some areas in which we looked at how that money could be used. And if you recall, it's about $183,000.
We have to, for those of you that are new, we have to hold back money. It's called holdback money in case we don't meet
the number of students enrolled, right. Projected numbers.
Because if we don't meet it, you know, remember back to that number of 49, what was it per student for, say 4,500 per student?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
4,500 per student. If we're down 50 kids, you know, if we only have 1,541 kids, we have to
give the money back.
Give that money back to the district. Or if we make it, then we can use it. If we make the, that's what it's for, hold back. So that we don't lose teachers necessarily, you know, in that kind of, remember you all that have been around a long time, the leveling is so painful. So that's what so if we get to keep the money, this is what we use it for.
So in keeping with that, you don't want to put a teacher under the reserves, because then you have to figure out how to incorporate that salary back in, because they're not going to let you get rid of the staff that's associated with those budgets. So what we did was looked at what are some needs that directly align with some of the other priorities that are listed. So Chris 180 is something that we partner as a company we partner with, and we only are able to utilize them 3 days a week. And so trying to figure out how to increase that number in order to address the needs of the students, especially since mental health is a big issue post-COVID. So looked at that, and then again, looking at funding some more, just looking at the bigger pieces, more instructional materials and supplies needed, because we do have to figure out how are we going to address meeting the certification with the new signature program, whatever it may be. And that may come with costs associated with updating labs or purchasing more materials in English and social studies to meet all the writing needs of IB. So we don't know what that looks like, and wanted to be able to set aside some money so that the signature program specialist can kind of guide us in that work. Again, because once we know what that program will be. We might need more professional development, more subscriptions, so people can understand what we're moving towards. And so that's 20,000 listed there. Looking at providing more resources for helping teachers not to feel so overwhelmed. So looking at how we can offer more tutorial services during lunch or after school, but through a contracted means. And then looking at how could we create kind of like a book. Oh, I need to change that spelling. A library of like best practice books for teachers to grab if there's something that they need to work on in the classroom. So a library for teachers. And then we also,
you can read continue to maintain Zen room, purchase yogas, mindfulness opportunities for staff, create opportunities to increase staff engagement, connectedness, and support. So, Chris, that's some of that there that you were talking about.
I was gonna ask about that. That I'm curious if there's does the district allow, like a lot of companies in the private sector give people some like money for a gym membership or classes, like that's like a normal benefit that is offered. And are we allowed to do anything like that? I think from my perspective that teachers would appreciate and would prefer opportunities outside of the building for that. I'm not sure if that's allowed.
There are, if you look at the HR website, there are opportunities for discounted membership to certain things that most districts give, but there is a limit to how much can be gifted to a teacher per board policy.
Also, the book, the library, like I think that fits under like mitigating burnout as well, around just like having access. Like I just spent $35 on a book I bought this week. But it's just because it's just a normal thing that I think a lot of teachers are doing. And even if it's like membership in, that's kind of another conversation as well. But like things that don't have to necessarily be exactly tied to our class, but might help sustain me as like in this work in general. I think it would be I love the idea of having some sort of, and I think teachers would really get into if we had some sort of budget and we could like each ask for a book and then build a culture around, kind of maintaining that. Like I know that's something to me in a teacher workroom that I would really appreciate. I think I can speak for Susan safely here and say that she'd probably be 2 thumbs up on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. It would have to work where I'll just say, we put in an order to Amazon for this book, this book, this book. We can't reimburse teachers out of gen funds. And so it would have to be an order that we put to that, the 14 social studies teachers would like this book. It can be, absolutely. That's what Ms. Hollis is talking about in the purchase books and for professional development. Just has to be done in the right way,
Cool, because I would say, artists, I don't know what you think, but I know this reserves money, so but moving money from some of the like Zen room stuff to have it like the library opportunities, or like having resources, that at a couple points in the year, or maybe in those monthly meetings, that there could be a place of like, is there anything that you are looking at ordering or interested in that you think we should have? That would be really, I think, an affirming practice.
And we do open it up currently right now under instructional materials for things. Many people have asked for additional books and resources for themselves and for others. So we do currently do those things.
Yeah, there's just to be honest, the feeling of it is that I don't know when it's gonna happen. Like sometimes I just kind of get an email being like, would anybody like anything? Like I don't have a sense of, there's not a structure that at least it could be just me being naive, but I think I'm not aware of like a regular structure around it, or exactly what's allowed or what's not allowed, or like, so we could.
Well, that was an innovative idea that was added for this year coming up. It is not something that has been done in the past. And so feel free to volunteer to be on the committee to come up with what those structures will be once we find out if we have any reserves. But currently, when we do put out those opportunities are solicited based on, as Mr. Staten said earlier, we noticed that we're not using a certain subset of money. How can we reallocate it in a meaningful way? And so that's why it's not given at every September, be ready for whatever. But, you know, we do try to give the opportunities as they present themselves.
Okay,
I think in these monthly meetings that we'll start having, some of that can be discussed and
give them a wish list. And then once we find out.
Oh, I'll give you a wish list.
Susan, you give us a wish list all the time.
Yeah, I can't, in my time here, I can't really remember turning a teacher down when they've asked for anything, honestly. You know,
yep.
Our PTSO is, you know, gives up to almost $1,000 at teacher grants for really anything. So, you know, that's teachers get what they would like, you know, if they speak up. And we do offer a number of times during the year to content areas to, you know, if there are things you need, that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, we just add if, yeah, down at the bottom, purchase instructional materials and supplies. So it would just add, we would just add that 71,000 to the line item that we already had, instructional materials and supplies, because we use that as a very all-encompassing category, and we use a tremendous amount of money in that area. So we would add. So again, this is if we don't have to lose any money, this is what we would do with the holdback money if we don't have to lose anything.
And then CARES, we get another year of CARES money. And with that money, we wanted to address, well, it's earmarked for certain things. And so that's how we're going to address the intervention time with purchasing an additional ELA and math teacher. And we already currently have, I need to take out that second line, a paraprofessional in math classes to kind of have more bodies in the classroom to get assistance for those needs specifically that students may have. And she currently services Algebra 1, pre-calculus, like higher failure rate classes, so that we can decrease the amount of students that need credit recovery. And
that's Mrs. Awad. And what we're doing here is we're moving her to this budget for this year. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing because we have this money.
And then to address that communication need that we talked about before, we spend a lot of money on stamps, and stamp prices are going up because we send a lot of things home. And so having something earmarked specifically to address sending back home map reports and progress reports and things of that nature.
Quick question. Do we, when considering teacher positions, how do we know if we have extra money in the budget to hire extra teachers? Like, how is that decision made?
Well, we staff based on student course selection, and then also like what's coming in from the rising ninth. You know, that's how we staff. It doesn't deviate that much from year to year. So we would never say there's money left over, so we're going to buy another teacher. That it would have to fit into the course selection process. What can you talk a little bit like we knew 2 years ago we needed because of student course, because of student requests, another art teacher. So we added another art teacher, Ms. Hargrove, to our art staff. And
Yeah,
that's
so
kind of how that works.
this would go back to kind of the earlier point we talked about, like at the beginning, about sitting down with that committee and just that check-in and saying, here's a list of courses. Right now, for instance, there's dance all the way from K through 8, and then the kids have no opportunity to take dance when they get to high school. Of course, they would never see dance on their course options because we don't have a dance teacher to teach it. Whereas there's clear interest in it, and we need it for several of the programs at Midtown. And just kind of watching the musical theater program, they need a dance teacher. They're really good. However, their dance is the weakest part of their program. Same thing about my program. And just knowing that we have those options with these kids that are going all the way to 8th grade and then having nothing to do in high school. So that's kind of just like, I was wondering, how do we decide, when we need another teacher or something like that?
What do you mean by they have it all the way up to 8th grade? Because there's no dance teacher at Howard.
We have a dance teacher at Howard.
Mr. Baker teaches dance and some other things, but it's not in the K to 5. They don't all have a dance teacher.
Not every school. I'm sorry. I'm thinking Hope Hill because my son goes to Hope Hill.
Yeah, and it's just Howard just has it because they chose to have it, and they have a space for it. It's it's we don't yet have a coherent process for that.
Go ahead. Then you got to add on to students only have 8 slots. So if they are going to now choose to take dance, and 5 of those are taken up with core classes and world language. So if they're going to choose to take dance, then that is going to eliminate them picking something else.
Another elective, right? Another,
And so that means you have to figure out who you're going to get rid of in order to bring on.
I just think, because wouldn't that mean, because right now we have classes that need to be kind of alleviated anyways, so wouldn't we be solving another problem by adding that extra elective, that extra pathway to do that?
What did you say? We have classes that what?
We don't have any overcrowded classes.
Don't have any. Okay, and I thought that was an issue we had, was with numbers and having kids, needing more options for things.
No, we don't. We have so many options.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really need other options at this point not for electives. The problem also with dance is that that's very small dance room. It's very small. And so it's also a space thing. We have in the past contracted out to have dance teacher come in and work with theater, with productions. We have paid for that type of service.
Yeah, it's the whole thing about, it would be the same thing as if I only had kids working in marching band, if I didn't have band class, kids not getting that fundamental instruction. So that's a whole different skill set, just thinking about it and just knowing that, there is a lot of interest in that. I have a girl who in my beginning band, she is serious about ballet. So is Sam. And I know that there would be several kids that would benefit from something like that. So I was just curious how we come to, when we do, when it's like, okay, we want to add this course or, not do something like this, especially if we don't have a teacher already on board that can teach that.
And we also looking at, when you say a lot of people, how do you quantify that? Because you have.
Can I just make a point here? I totally agree that this is a valid thing that we need to research, but could we do this as a side discussion and try to finish with what our agenda is, unless this is going to affect the direct budget thing, Artis? Do you think?
I literally just was curious. That was only, yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I'll just say, if you're going to bring on a teacher, Mr. Sutton, you have to have it's a full-time teacher, that's 6 class periods. So you'd have to have, 25 kids wanting that 6 times, so it's not, the need was absolutely clear with art, that more kids were requesting art classes than we could accommodate. So that's why we added an art teacher, a visual arts teacher. So, we do look at that. Okay, so yes, questions to consider. So this is what we've been doing. Are our school priorities from our strategic plan reflected in this budget? Our new positions and our resources included in the budget to address our major priorities. So you saw in there, we were adding like an ELA and a math teacher to address our major priorities. Do we know as a team the plan to support implementation of these priorities beyond the budget? So how will we do that? That's what we're working on. What trade-offs are being made in order to support these priorities? How are district and cluster priorities reflected in our budget? Cluster priorities, what staff, materials, et cetera, are dedicated to supporting our cluster priorities. And we're working on our cluster priorities, of course, with the signature programs. What staff, materials are dedicated to supporting our signature program. So we've put that money in there. Are there positions our school will share with another school? I'm sorry, I can't read that because the little chat's there, but are there positions with another school? The only thing we share, the thing we share right now is our sign language teacher, Ms. Miley. That position is shared with Hope Hill. So we, that's what we share. So those are the things that when we build our budget, we want to make sure that we're doing these things.
Okay.
That brings us to the end. So if there are any more questions, we'll be willing to answer those. And then I guess, Boyd, you can decide whether or not you want to do a preliminary vote, wait till the next meeting, all those kind of things.
Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions on what's been presented?
I just have a comment. I just really appreciate the time and care that went into this budget. And I do think it reflects the goals and priorities. So thank you so much, Dr. Bachman and Ms. Hollis, for all of your work.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So the next step is on Thursday, Ms. Hollis and I have a staffing meeting where we basically talk about the staff and does the budget support it. So that happens. And then we'll bring that back. After we get that feedback, we'll bring that back to you all, and that will be the final, the voting, the approval of the budget for our Go team. So it's not going to change. Go ahead, Susan.
In this staffing meeting, does it often vary from, like, there's not going to be probably a huge discrepancy in what y'all have laid out and what the district says? Because
we're pretty much in charge of our money. I can say I want 10 math teachers and 8 ELA.
Yeah.
They're not going to get, they used to, if you remember, they used to say, okay, Grady Midtown's going to get, we're buying you 10 teachers here. That doesn't happen anymore. So, which is why we could buy an additional art teacher, that kind of thing. So it won't change much at all.
Okay.
It won't change. So, so we can, if you wanted to wait till, our next meeting in March to present how it goes, but it won't change much.
Okay.
Okay. If that's the procedure, is there anything from Dr. Bachman from your principal's report or anything else going on? No?
No.
Are there any announcements? Does anybody have or know of anything needs to be shared? No? Okay.
I have a couple from the Go team office.
Okay.
One is, and I can't remember if we've told you this already, but declarations are open for Go team elections. All schools across the district have 2 parent seats and 2 instructional staff seats up for election. So please declare if you're interested in serving again, or if you are no longer eligible or no longer interested. Please help Dr. Bachman identify quality candidates to fill those 4 seats and do their declaration. You can find the declarations at apssstrongschools.com. Declarations are open for another week. They're open till the 28th. So please help with that. And the other announcement is that please complete your trainings, especially the budget training, before that final budget approval meeting. That is part of that process. And for Go Team members, we are having another one of our G3 Summit conversations. We have Erica Long coming to speak to our Go Team members with a legislative update. So if you've been hearing things and have questions about what's been going on in the legislature, Erica Long is very plugged in and will be able to help answer all your questions with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Dr. Bachman, do they come to you, the Go Team declarations, or do they go to Diane?
Oh, they go to a central, yeah.
Okay.
They do all that. Yeah.
So we don't know necessarily where we stand right now, Diane, is that correct? Or if we know we need a certain number?
You need at least 2 parents and at least 2 staff.
Okay.
I have not had a chance to look today.
Oh, that's fine. I was just curious.
We don't usually have a problem, which is great.
You don't usually have a problem.
Okay. All right. Well, if that, thank you for all your work, Dr. Bachman and Hollis. We really appreciate it. If there's nothing further, is there a move to adjourn?
Is there any public comment, or is there anybody on, or any?
I don't know how we even manage that.
I don't know.
You can go to the YouTube website and see if anyone's posted any questions right quick.
Okay. All right. Well, if that, thank you for all your work, Dr. Bachman and Hollis.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really appreciate it. If there's nothing further, is there a move to adjourn?
Is there any public comment, or is there anybody on?
Jennifer Keenan,
I
don't know how is on there. We even manage that.
You can go to the YouTube website and see if anyone's posted any questions right quick.
We're in a loop. All right. Well, if that, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just reading from here. Jennifer Keenan's looking, she had questions about some slides from the event. And she's wondering if the Midtown Foundation can provide funding for the second item and third item, media center and web-based subscriptions. I guess, Dr. Bachman, we could look into that if you felt that was a wise way to move things. But otherwise, is there a move to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, Vicky and Artis seconds it. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, the ayes have it. Thank you for your time, everyone, and we will see you in March.